before we get to what's ahead in 2018 and beyond, I want to say a little bit about what did we do in 2017 as a forum. First of all, you heard from Caroline, it's 14th year, so it is also the 14th Annual Analyst event. We do this every year in November. And we started it 14 years ago at a building in Bell South. It was largely focused on Wi-Fi, and we had somebody from Gartner and someone from Yankee Group there. And I just wanted to show of hands, who was there that meeting? Oh, so we do have some folks, but hey, you know what we realized? We are older than the iPhone. So we've been around. And it has been changing. Now, what we did last year, just to give you an idea of the programs that we had every month, every third Thursday, that's what you'll be coming to as members next year, 2018, is we had discussions on mobile payments, wearables, smart cities, AR, VR, mobile video, innovation, mobile security, mobile and education, and robotics and artificial intelligence. The folks that brought it to you, the co-chairs of the program committee, I'd like for you to stand up. Chris Cox and Ratan Bhavirani. So that's what we discussed. Now, I don't know what we're going to talk about tonight, but we do know that we got a great panel lined up. And to lead us through that panel, I'm going to introduce the moderator. It's Anna Tavares, Lattibeaudiere. Did I get that right? Thank you. Anna is head of North America for GSMA. And as you know, there is a good presence of GSMA in this room, in the city, and globally. And Anna has responsibility for all GSMA activities in North America. And prior to this role, she led GSMA efforts on connected living in different industry verticals like healthcare, automotive, smart cities, and consumer electronics. And before joining GSMA, she held various consultancy positions at BCG, Deloitte Consulting, Accenture, and in private banking. So you're going to hear a lot of variety of views, and to lead us in that discussion is Anna. So please help me welcome Anna.
Thank you very much. Hello, good evening. It's great to see a big crowd. Ashok was really brave in attempting my last name. Most people just stop at Anna or Anna Tavares, and they never attend Lattibeaudiere. So thank you very much for making the effort and actually doing it really well. We have a great panel here, and I want to give time for everyone to share with you what they believe the future will hold. On my right, I have Jeff Kagan. Jeff is a wireless industry analyst. He's a powerful, influential member of the wireless telecom and technology industry. And he's an expert of who and what is leading and who are the losers and winners of this space. So we're going to hear a little bit about that from Jeff. We also have...
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Great to have you. We also have... I had Perry first. We have Perry. Perry Walter, who is the Managing Director of HDH Advisors. And Perry brings us more of a financial perspective to the winners and losers, the predictions. He's done a lot of evaluations of companies in many industries, so he has a very different point of view, I believe, to the panel. He'll bring his extensive experience in the research of wireless sector, many deals and M&A that is led in this industry. Thank you, Gary. We also have Gregory Tavares from Deloitte Consulting, and Greg is going to give us more of strategy consulting perspective. He's worked with many companies on growth strategies and identifying how they become successful. And so we'll have a very different take potentially from my other two panelists on his left. So thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
So in order to start and make it interesting and give our audience loads of questions, I'm going to ask each one of you to let me know, what do you think the future holds? What are the predictions you have for 2018? And then we'll go from here. Yeah.
All right. This is Jeff Kagan, and this is the time of year I also write columns in a variety of news websites and investment websites. And this is the time of year that I think about what's coming up at the end of the year, next year, what we have to look forward to. And it's always very, very interesting and exciting. And this is the time of year that we should all be able to take a few minutes, look back where we've come from over the last 10 years, realize where we are today, and then decide where we're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Because we think this industry is very wild and crazy, and it is, because 10 years ago, there was no iPhone, and there was no Android, and the industry was basically a voice-only and wireless data, but BlackBerry and Nokia were number one. Today, BlackBerry and Nokia are not. Today, Google Android, Samsung Galaxy, Apple iPhone, these are all the number one players. And that happened very quickly. So the question next is, what's going to happen over the next 5 years, 10 years? Because everything is going to be very different compared to where it is today. What's it going to look like? The industry is changing. It used to be, if you wanted to be in the wireless industry, you had to work for a wireless company or a handset company. But going forward, every company in every industry is going to be in the wireless business. Think about it. Healthcare, public safety, communications. I'm not able to come up with a lot of industries here, but every industry is going to be using wireless to, at first, gain a competitive advantage, and then eventually, everyone in the industry is going to have to follow them, otherwise they're going to lose. Because this industry, as every other kind of industry, has a growth wave. And the growth wave in wireless grows, it crests, and it falls. And we've seen it grow and crest and fall several times over the last several decades. And it's continuing to do that. And that's the exciting part. We don't know who's going to be winning 5 years from now. Because the year before Apple invented the iPhone and Google invented the Android, we had no idea that they'd be the winners. So who's going to be the winners? What technologies are going to transform our lives? How is it going to transform business? How is it going to transform our investments? How is it going to transform our jobs? Everything is going to change. The smartphone used to be a device that we carried to make phone calls. But it's becoming the remote control for our lives. It starts the cars, it opens the doors, we buy things with it. We store all of our information. We never used to be able to walk out of the house without grabbing 3 things: our keys, our wallet, and our smartphone. But tomorrow, we're only going to have to take the smartphone because it's going to have everything in it. And that's what's exciting. And the industry is continuing to change. And this is probably one of the most exciting times in this industry. And it's one of the most exciting industries in the world because every other industry and every other part of our lives is tied to wireless. And that's us.
That's great. You want to give your thoughts to start with? Maybe Greg first?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. So I get to spend my days helping companies think through growth strategies in the wireline and wireless businesses, both within telecom and in media and technology as well. So it's a pretty cool job. I like it. And we spend a lot of time thinking through what's next, right? And so just like Jeff said, I mean, if you look back, as history is any indication, I think surveys said back, in 1992 that there'd be about 900,000 phones around the world. or in the US, sorry. So 900,000 phones. So from 92 to 2000, we had 100 million mobile phones. Right? So the power of mobile took over and is pervasive every day in everything that we are doing. Every one of you has a phone. Every one of you probably has a smartphone. A lot of you probably have tablets. How many of you have kids? And you probably can't take them away from any of the devices that they're on top of, right? So, so mobile and connectivity in general has a profound impact on us today, and I would posit will continue to have a very profound impact on us going forward in two kind of areas. One is the personalization of products and services. And so we saw earlier the demonstration from a content perspective. Prior personalization was you being able to configure applications on your iPhone or your smartphone. Future personalization are things that you don't even know are going to happen. Right? Content is going to be uber personalized for you. Information is going to be uber personalized for you. And the question that I think we're all going to have to deal with is how much information are we able to consume and make decisions on and act upon versus how much information is being given and delivered on a daily basis by the many things that are going to connect us. And so I think decision sciences are going to be very important in trying to figure out what are the guardrails you put on the information that will be used for you, like in your lives, and how do you control that in a meaningful way. Right? The next, I think, that's going to be extremely important is security, and the amount and how your information is protected and how your information is maintained as your information rather than everybody else's information. To date, we've been okay we've been the product and the cost of using services out there like search, out there like social. There's a question, in the EU right now as well, most prominently, but here in the US as well, as cyber becomes much more of an issue, is really what's that cost of information and how can we manage that accordingly and use that information for our own benefits, not necessarily for the benefits of everybody else. And so I think all of those things are going to be even more prevalent. And when you think about it, in '85, there were about half a device per capita. Right? Sitting today, on average, there's about 2 devices per capita. Right? In 2025, depending upon what analyst or report you pick up, there's expected to be between 60 and 140 devices per capita. Think about all the information that that's going to provide, and think about all the complexity that that's going to drive as each one of those things has to interact with itself to provide information to you and to be secured in order for it to make great decisions and in order for it to better our life going forward and the lives of those around us. So, I think connectivity and the buzzword of the Internet of Things, but connectivity and all of the things that are going to be around us and pervasive with information is really going to drive a lot of innovation, and how you manage that complexity, whether it be in manufacturing or healthcare or other places, is going to be a primary focus going forward.
Great, thank you very much. Perry?
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening. Perry Walter, HDH Advisors. In my day job, what I do is I help around valuation, anything that's controversial about valuation, that's what we do. It's interesting, Greg's comment about that 880,000, I think it was, originally was the forecast for cellular. The senior analyst I started working for at Raymond James, I'm going to date myself, in 1993, he was crazy. He said $1 million. He was at Solomon Brothers, and he had to outdo the other analysts, so he said $1 million. So that's, tells you how far we've come in wireless. But from a financial perspective, I've been asked to just kind of comment on a couple of key areas that I see are kind of what's coming next from a financial perspective. What I see is really key in the wireless space. While you might not think of it as wireless, it's important to wireless, which is what I call the new last mile, which is getting the signal to that cell tower. That signal to the cell tower used to be T1 lines originally. Now that we're doing so many things that both my esteemed panelists have talked about, we got to get all that stuff to the cell tower so it can get to your device. And that's requiring a lot of fiber. And that is the new financial battleground in the wireless space, is how do we get that last mile to get to all the towers, the DAS, the pico cells, pick your name, you want to call it microcell, pico cells. And this area from a financial perspective is on fire. There is a private equity firm called EQT that has bought both Loomis Networks and Spirit Communications, very big players in the fiber sector. To give you another idea, CSNL bought a company here in town that I mentioned last year called Tower Cloud, very big player at a very nice multiple. And fourth example of showing just how on fire this industry is, there is now a publicly traded SPAC, Specially Purpose Acquisition Corp. There is a private equity guy and a guy from AT&T, former AT&T guy, that have been able to raise $270 million for something called Panceris Communications. I think it's Panceris Acquisition Corp. Ticker WRLS. I don't, not promoting it, not saying it, but they were able to raise $270 million with the sole purpose to go out and buy a company that does fiber. It's all they're doing. It's amazing. I mean, just think about that. They have 2 years to go buy a company. No one knows which company they're going to acquire, what valuation, what have you, but that's how on fire it is in the financial sector. The second point I'll make is, people are familiar with the tower space. It's been a phenomenon for a while here in the U.S. It's going international. And what you're seeing is all the big tower companies really expand and buying up towers in a lot of international areas, even areas that you might say, oh, that might be a little bit difficult to get towers in or to do business in as a U.S. entity. Well, they're making it happen because that's where they're seeing the value. And the international value of wireless and wireless towers is going up dramatically. And third, just to be a little controversial, because I was told to be a little controversial, there's a lot of talk about 5G, and will that be the next way of providing the last mile to the residents instead of fiber? Because there's been a lot of incidents, and we talked a little bit about it last year, problems getting fiber to residential areas. I think it's going to have a little more trouble than you may think. There's been some recent articles in various publications talking about the interference issues. And I think that those of us who have been in the industry for a while, Dan Hesse, I don't know if anyone knows that name, but he left AT&T. He formed a company called was involved with a company called Terrabeam that was going to be the last mile to the commercial space. Well, they found out, they based it in Seattle, and they found out there's this stuff called fog that causes interference. And even with all these other 5G companies, they're finding out that the ability to get through trees and foliage and all that stuff is a little bit more trouble than they initially thought. So I think that's going to be a real challenge in 2018 and really for the next few years to figure that out. How do we get that last mile to the residents for wireless?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Perry. I will ask you to be interactive. So if I'm going to continue making questions, and if you have something that you really want to say, don't wait for me to direct it to you. I think we'll make it more interactive for our audience too. From 2G to LTE and now talking about 5G, and this has required a lot of capital investment, right, from wireless companies. At the same time, we're seeing business models being totally disrupted, right, and the traditional pay per minute and the traditional ways of having services delivered are changing. Platform plays are disrupting other industries as well. So who is going to win? What are the ones that you believe are going to, 2018, are going to become successful in monetizing and deliver money here?
So who's going to be the winner going forward? That's the question. We saw many companies transform the industry in the last 10 years. The next 10 years, we're going to see it completely reinvent itself once again. I was watching the moves of AT&T Mobility and Verizon Wireless, and I'm seeing how different they are compared to T-Mobile and Sprint. And now we're seeing a third group. Companies like Comcast with Xfinity Mobile and Charter and Google, Project 5, and other companies that are going to be getting into the space. We're realizing the wireless industry is splitting into 3 different parts. And the third part is actually going to be getting a lot more competitive with a lot newer companies. We saw Comcast try to break into wireless, almost a decade ago, and they failed. But they weren't alone. Other companies tried and failed also. Cox. Yeah, all the cable companies, and Amazon.com, and Fire Phone, and Facebook Phone. Remember, they were all out and pulled within a few months. That was when the Apple iPhone and Google Android and that whole new segment of the industry came into birth. But all of a sudden now, Comcast is back into the market with Xfinity Wireless, and when I went there and visited them, it's incredible. They're not using that as a growth. They're not going to be competing with AT&T and Verizon and Sprint and T-Mobile for the #1 position. They're just using that to offer another service to their customers so that they can hang on to their customers and keep their customer base on the cable television side from slipping. But Comcast is no longer a cable television company. When you think of Comcast, when you think of Charter, what do you think they are? You think they're cable TV companies, but they're not. Cable TV is not primary anymore. What are they? They're broadband companies. They offer cable TV, they offer wireless, and what they're trying to do is get multiple services, getting the customer to use multiple services going forward, so that they're going to be able to hang on to those customers going forward. It'll improve the retention. So that's just on that side. What about AI? What about IoT? What about the cloud? What about all of these other industries? All of these other companies in all of these other industries? They're all coming into wireless. So we've seen a transformation over the last 10 years, and the leaders today are different than they were 10 years ago. So who are the leaders going to be tomorrow? I don't have an answer to the question, but I can tell you who's going to be hammering and fighting it out. You've got all these companies. You've got IBM with Watson. You've got all of these companies that want to grow in new and exciting ways. Some of them are existing traditional companies that we're familiar with. Some of them are brand new that we've never even heard of before. What new technologies are we going to be using every day, tomorrow, that we're not using today? Today, we use the iPhone and the Android to walk into a store and buy our groceries. We don't have to swipe a credit card anymore. We couldn't do that 5 years ago. So what are we going to be doing in the next few years? If you need a taxi, you have to call a taxi. Today you call an Uber or a Lyft or one of the other services. Those industries were created by wireless. They were industries that were ideas, simple ideas, that suddenly are gigantic, growth-oriented companies. So what other kinds of ideas are we going to see going forward? That's the exciting part of what we live in. I can't answer your question to tell you who's going to be leading 10 years from now because nobody knows. The question is, will it be the leaders of today? Or will the leaders of today, like BlackBerry and Nokia, fade? And will they be replaced? Maybe it'll be a mix. But now is the time that you need to keep your eyes open because things are changing. Things are always changing. Things have changed over the last 10 years and they're going to continue to change.
Yeah, I'll just extend on that. And something you said earlier about different industries. There was a friend of mine in town who's in the financials area, and Steve Wall knows him. He goes, what's causing certain industries to have their hair on fire? And how do you put that hair, get them from what problems are really causing issues? And how can wireless solve those? And I think Jeff's point is well taken. I'm not going to sit here and try to predict a lot of those, but I think there are a couple of themes that we can think about. Logistics. Just getting stuff from point A to point B is a key area where wireless can add so many dynamics. Not only knowing where that package is, but making sure the drivers are safe, that everything is being done in such a way that it is efficient. The second thing I'll tell you about is, there are, the automotive industry we haven't really talked about, but that is, I happen to share a building with a couple of companies, but one of them is formerly Hughes Telematics, now Verizon Telematics, and I have seen some of the cars that they're doing, what they're doing with those, and the ability if wireless can literally take it from, I don't care if I'm in my office and it knows I'm on a VoIP phone, I leave my office, it goes onto Wi-Fi, it goes down the elevator, hopefully seamlessly, which it doesn't do right now, even in some of the carriers, just saying. But if we can get it to you, we're in the car and I have a voice call and maybe, sorry about that, guys. Voice call, just can't get it right. But a voice call, and I'm also sharing some information on a tablet. I can take that and I can go into my car and before I'm driving, of course, share that. But can I do that transition without it dropping? That's really cool. That's really powerful. Someone figures that out, and the IoT for the car is one of the key IoT items, in my opinion. That's going to be high.
Yeah, I think when we think about who's going to win, my perspective is, infrastructure is always going to be needed, right? And so when you look at, everybody needs, and I think all of us would argue that everybody's going to need ubiquitous connectivity going forward, right? Whether that be, and how that's delivered, we can all argue. But I think, the infrastructure companies, or the fiber networks, as you talked about, the wireless networks, the wireline networks, are all going to be critically important to enable every single industry going forward, whether it be retail or manufacturing or logistics, and it'll continue to become more important. So I think winners will own kind of infrastructure, and be able to put products and services on top of that. Right now, I think the amount of value they want to derive from those assets is going to be the key question, right? It's like, so if you look at how wireless companies today, each one of them kind of differentiates on specific areas. Now, if connectivity becomes ubiquitous and we can use all different types of spectrum, shared spectrum or dedicated spectrum to deliver connectivity, we have to try and find differentiating characteristics, whether it be latency or other things, in order to continue to provide better products and services, or infrastructure becomes common, right? And it's less easy to differentiate and create and capture that value going forward. The most interesting thing to me as well is this whole concept of the sharing economy. And before, it was kind of everybody owned their individual assets, right? And they had to take those and try and make rents off them. And now you see in the sharing economy something as simple as bikes. Bikes have now, haven't looked at many bike stock companies, but I would imagine, look at the number of bikes that are littered all around Dallas, and then I imagine Atlanta as well, right? I'm not sure that the government actually, or the municipalities really like it, because they're using that space for free, right? They're not paying rent to put those bikes wherever they put those bikes, but they found a way to leverage that and create a new business model.
Don't give the government any ideas.
So I think that's another thing that's going to become pervasive and very interesting as well, is just how much value can be created on top of existing infrastructure, and how can companies continue to utilize the sharing economy, whether it be Uber, whether it be bike companies, or name it, right, to create and capture value for individuals.